Three wars, one moment, and a decision made in Washington today that just slammed the door on the most serious peace offer Iran has put on the table. Iran offered to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway that carries 1/5 of the world's oil, the choke point that has crippled global energy markets for over 2 months. They offered to open it. Trump said no. And tonight, as the blockade tightens, as ceasefire talks collapse, and as Israeli forces push deeper into Lebanon, this conflict is not winding down, it is widening. Stay with me, because what is happening right now, on three simultaneous fronts, is something the world has not seen in a generation. Because there are three separate but deeply connected stories running simultaneously tonight, and you need to understand all three. Front 1, the Gulf. Let's put this in context, because there are three separate but deeply connected stories running simultaneously tonight, and you need to understand all three. Front 1, the Gulf. Since February 28th, when the U.S. and Israel launched strikes on Iran, the Strait of Hormuz has been effectively closed. Iran blocked it. The U.S. responded with a counter-blockade of Iranian ports starting April 13th. Right now, there's a dual blockade. Iran is choking the Gulf, and America is choking Iran. 25% of the world's seaborne oil trade, 20% of global liquefied natural gas, all of it frozen. Front 2. The diplomacy. A fragile ceasefire has been in place since April 8th, brokered by Pakistan. Talks have continued in Islamabad. And this week, Iran submitted a new proposal: open the strait, lift the blockade, and postpone the nuclear question for later. A senior analyst called it reasonable. Washington called it insufficient. Front 3, Lebanon. Separately, and this is the front that most international media has been undercovering, the IDF has been conducting an intensifying ground and air campaign against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley. A ceasefire with Hezbollah technically exists. And yet, the raids have not stopped. Three fronts, three fragile ceasefires, and today, all three just got more dangerous at the same time. Let's talk about what Trump's rejection of Iran's offer actually means. Because it's not just a diplomatic snub. It's a strategic hardening that experts warn could trigger the very escalation everyone claims to want to avoid. Here is Iran's position, stripped to its core. We will open the strait if you lift the blockade on our ports, postpone the nuclear argument, restore shipping, stop the economic bleeding, then talk. And here is Washington's position. No. The blockade stays until Iran makes concrete commitments on nuclear weapons. The blockade stays until Iran makes concrete commitments on nuclear weapons. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the proposal was better than expected, but then immediately questioned Tehran's intentions, warning that any deal must definitively prevent Iran from sprinting towards a nuclear weapon. CNN reported that Trump simply doesn't love the proposal. The reason Washington is holding firm? The blockade is, by their own assessment, working. Trump told reporters, and these are his exact words, that the blockade is somewhat more effective than the bombing. They are choking like a stuffed pig. But here is where analysts are sounding alarm bells. Iran has set lifting the blockade as a precondition for returning to any talks, and by rejecting the proposal without a counteroffer, sources suggest Washington may have just removed the last off-ramp available before the ceasefire fully collapses. This could trigger a return to active military operations. CENTCOM has already briefed Trump on a plan for a short and powerful wave of strikes. The Dark Eagle hypersonic missile deployment request is on the table, and Iran, for its part, has warned of practical and unprecedented action if the blockade continues. We are not in a peace process right now. We are in a standoff between two sides that each believe time is on their side, and at least one of them is wrong. Key developments. Development 1. The dual blockade is strangling the global economy in real time, and it's getting worse. Before this conflict, roughly 25% of the world's seaborne oil and 20% of global LNG passed through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. All of that is now frozen. Major container shipping companies, Maersk, CMA CGM, Hapag-Lloyd, suspended Hormuz transits from day one and have not resumed. Iran has gone further. It has been boarding merchant ships, firing on vessels that received clearance and then had it revoked, and has laid sea mines in the Strait. The scale of individual incidents is escalating. On April 22nd, an Iranian gunboat attacked the Greek-owned cargo ship Epaminondas with gunfire and rocket-propelled grenades, despite having given the ship clearance to pass. The bridge was significantly damaged. There are also reports that Iran has lost track of some of the mines it laid in the Strait, meaning the waterway is dangerous not just because of Iranian patrol boats, but because of unseen, drifting explosive devices that no one can locate. But that's not all. Development 2. Germany's chancellor just publicly humiliated U.S. strategy, and he's not alone. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, an ally, not an adversary, stood up this week and said bluntly that the United States and Israel have no truly convincing strategy in their negotiations with Iran. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, an ally, not an adversary, stood up this week and said bluntly that the United States and Israel have no truly convincing strategy in their negotiations with Iran. He said the Iranians had proven clearly stronger than expected. Australia's foreign minister launched a diplomatic tour of Japan, China, and South Korea, specifically to discuss energy security after the blockade. She said countries getting 80% of their oil through Hormuz have been disproportionately affected. When your closest allies are publicly questioning your strategy, not in private, not through back channels, but in front of cameras and student forums, that is a signal of fracturing coalition confidence that analysts say the U.S. cannot afford to ignore. What happened next shocked analysts. Development 3. On the same day Trump rejected Iran's offer, Israel launched a massive new wave of strikes against Hezbollah. The IDF struck more than 20 Hezbollah-linked infrastructure sites across the Bekaa Valley in southern Lebanon. Weapons manufacturing facilities, storage depots, rocket launch sites. On April 30th, a Hezbollah drone killed a 19-year-old Israeli soldier, Sergeant Leem Ben Hamo of the Golani Brigade, and wounded 12 others when it struck a military cargo carrier at an artillery position near the northern border. Another drone hit an artillery site. Hezbollah also claimed to have shot down an Israeli Hermes 450 drone with a surface-to-air missile. And Netanyahu himself addressed the IDF's senior command conference and said something that deserves attention. "We are striking now, in the security zone, north of the security zone, and north of the Litani." He added that Hezbollah has about 10% of the missiles it had at the beginning of the war, but said, "We still have 2 missions left." 2 missions. The IDF hasn't named them. But the Chief of Staff approved plans for what he called a prolonged operation. This is where things take a dangerous turn. Development 4. Iran is directly linking the Lebanon front to the Hormuz front, and that connection is now a tripwire. Iran has explicitly stated that Lebanon must be included in any ceasefire deal with the United States and Israel. In other words, you cannot have peace on the Gulf without peace in Lebanon. Every IDF strike on Hezbollah is, in Tehran's framework, a violation of the conditions under which they would consider reopening the Strait. And Hezbollah itself, through senior official Wafik Safa, threatened the Lebanese government with internal consequences if it cooperates with any disarmament process. So here is the architecture of the crisis. The Gulf blockade cannot end without a nuclear deal. The nuclear deal cannot progress without ending the Lebanon campaign. High stakes. The Lebanon campaign will not end while Hezbollah remains armed. And Hezbollah will not disarm while Iran remains under siege. Every single thread leads back to every other thread. Pull one, and you pull them all. High stakes. Let me step back, because I think in the blur of daily developments, it is easy to lose sight of the actual human weight of what is happening. The countries that get 80% of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz are not the United States. They are Japan, South Korea, India, Pakistan, China, the economic engines of Asia and South Asia. They are the ones absorbing the sharpest pain from this standoff between Washington and Tehran. Fuel prices in these nations have surged, supply chains have fractured, and governments are facing a choice between domestic economic pain and alienating Washington. In Lebanon, the cost is even more direct. Israeli strikes on April 30th alone killed 9 people, including 2 children, according to Lebanon's health ministry. IDF soldiers are dying in Hezbollah drone attacks. A 19-year-old soldier from Herzliya is dead. There are reports of Israeli troops looting civilian property in southern Lebanese villages, something the IDF chief of staff publicly condemned as disgraceful and ordered investigated. Meanwhile, in Iran, inflation is running at triple digits. Basic goods have become unaffordable for ordinary families, and yet the regime's public posture remains defiant, which tells you one of 2 things. Either the leadership is genuinely willing to absorb this pain indefinitely, or it is too brittle internally to show any flexibility without risking its own collapse. Either possibility is dangerous. The blockade is not just a negotiating tactic. It is a siege, and history tells us that sieges either end in surrender or in desperation. Now, here is what we genuinely don't know. And in a situation this complex, the unknowns are as important as the known facts. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has barely been seen or heard publicly since the opening strikes of this war killed his father. He issued a written statement, read by someone else on state television. That is not the behavior of a leader in firm control. Reports suggest significant factional tension inside Tehran over whether to hold firm or negotiate. The foreign minister is described as operating strictly within red lines set by the National Security Council, lines he apparently cannot cross even if he wanted to. On the American side, sources confirm CENTCOM has prepared strike plans, but Trump has not authorized anything. He posted an AI-generated meme of himself holding a gun with the tagline, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." He told reporters the blockade is genius, and he told his national security team he doesn't love Iran's proposal. But sources say he has not yet ordered kinetic action, as of this week, and sees the blockade as his primary leverage. So the question that nobody can answer right now is, who blinks first? And the more uncomfortable question, what if neither side blinks at all? There's one more thing worth noting. Iran reportedly lost track of mines it laid in the Strait of Hormuz, meaning even if a deal is reached tonight, even if both sides agree to open the strait tomorrow morning, there may be unseen mines in the water that no one can locate. The strait may be physically dangerous to reopen, regardless of what any political agreement says. That detail has received almost no attention in major coverage, and it should. So here is where things stand tonight. The Dark Eagle hypersonic missile, never once fired in combat, is reportedly being requested for deployment. Iran offered what analysts called a reasonable first step: open the strait, pause the nuclear argument, stop the bleeding. Washington rejected it and tightened the blockade. CENTCOM is briefing the president on strike options. The Dark Eagle hypersonic missile, never once fired in combat, is reportedly being requested for deployment. Israel is pushing deeper into Lebanon, killing Hezbollah commanders and striking weapons sites 100 kilometers into the Bekaa Valley. A 19-year-old soldier is dead. 9 Lebanese civilians, including 2 children, are dead, and the fragile ceasefire on 3 fronts grows more fragile by the hour. 36 countries have signed a statement saying they are ready to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Germany's chancellor has publicly said America has no convincing strategy. Australia is scrambling to secure alternative energy supplies for its region. And there are diplomats in Islamabad who are running out of proposals to write. The global economy, from gas stations in Texas to fuel queues in Karachi to empty shelves in Dubai, is absorbing the cost of a political deadlock that 2 governments refuse to break. There are mines in the water. There are missiles on launchers pointed in every direction. There are generals with briefing books full of strike plans waiting for a phone call. And there are diplomats in Islamabad who are running out of proposals to write. The Strait of Hormuz was supposed to reopen. The ceasefire was supposed to hold. The talks were supposed to progress. None of those things are happening. And the world is watching what happens next. Optional add-ons. Trump says no. Strait stays shut, mines in the water. Missiles on standby. 3 wars. 1 decision, no exit. 3 alt-click-worthy titles. Trump rejects Iran's Hormuz deal, and the world is running out of time. Iran offered to open the Strait.